Mine's on.
Test. Yours is on.
Oh, it's working now. It's working now.
Okay, sorry.
Hello.
That will be awesome. That's some awesome video right there. Apologies, technical difficulties. Good evening, ladies. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Berkeley County Board of Education meeting this Tuesday, September 24th, 2019. I call this meeting to order. I declare a quorum is present and the media has been notified. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion by Mr. McQuillan, a second by Ms. Littleton to approve the agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We'll now entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the board meeting on September 10th, 2019. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion by Mr. McQuillan. A second by Ms. Conder. To approve the agenda, is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, 7-0. Now we'll entertain a motion to enter executive session.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion by Ms. Conder, a second by Mr. McQuillan to enter into executive session. The stated purpose of executive session is the discussion of pending employment matters to include the appointment of an administrator and one student attendance appeal. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Thank you. Not on. There it is. I will now entertain a motion to return to regular session.
Made the motion.
Second.
There is a motion by Mr. Ramsey, a second by Ms. Littleton to return to regular session. I'd like to state for the minutes that no action was taken in executive session. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, please respond by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We are now in regular session. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll now move on to Agenda Item 4A, Citizen Comments. No one registered prior to 6:30 for citizens' comments. There are none. We will now go into actions as required from executive session. We'll start with Ms. Littleton.
I make a motion to accept the recommendation of the administration to name Ms. Benny Smith as the new Director of Child Nutrition for Berkeley County School District with a contract to take effect September 25th, 2019.
Second. There's a motion by Ms. Littleton, a second by Walford, to accept the recommendation of the administration to name Ms. Benny Smith as the new Director of Child Nutrition for Berkeley County School District with a contract to take effect tomorrow on September 25th, 2019. Is there any additional discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Ms. Smith? Thank you for taking good care of us, but we know you take care of lots of other kids beyond us 2 times a month to have delicious, nutritious food. So thank you for your dedication to the school district and for the really good food. So congratulations.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to accept the recommendation of the administration to add 1 transportation operations manager and 3 operation officers in the transportation department.
Second.
There's a motion by Ms. Conder, a second by Mr. Ramsey, to accept the recommendation of the administration to add 1 transportation operations manager and 3 operation officers in the transportation department. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Thank you, Mr. Terry. I know lots of work has been done in transportation to get us on the right track, literally and figuratively, and we hope that these operations manager will continue our vision for efficient and safe transportation for all of our kids. Thank you for your work so far.
I make the motion to accept the recommendation of the administration to approve that formal complaint and report of the breach of contract for 1 teacher to be sent to the State Board of Education, asked that appropriate action be taken against the employee for unprofessional conduct as discussed during executive session.
Second.
There's a motion by Mr. Ramsey, a second by Mr. McQuillan, to accept the recommendation of the administration to approve a formal complaint and report of breach of contract for 1 teacher to be sent to the State Board of Education to ask that appropriate action be taken against the employee for unprofessional conduct as discussed during executive session. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Now we had 1 attendance appeal. I'll now entertain a motion for student number 1.
Madam Chair, I move that we deny the request for student number 1.
Second.
There's a motion by Mr. Wright, a second by Mr. Ramsey, to deny the appeal of student number 1. Is there any additional discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, 7-0. That concludes our action from executive session, item 5A. We'll now move on to the reports from the standing committees. First, a report from the Committee on Academics and Innovation, Chair Ann Conder.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The Committee on Academics and Innovation met on September the 10th, 2019. On recommendation of the committee, I move to approve Head Start budget expenditure reports for July 2019, Head Start credit card report for July 2019, prospective new hires, and the self-assessment improvement plan.
We have a recommendation from committee. No second is required. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, 7-0.
Madam Chairman, that concludes my report.
Next is the Committee on Finance and Human Resources, Chair Michael Ramsey.
Madam Chairwoman, the Committee on Finance and Human Resources met on September the 10th, 2019. On recommendation of the committee, I move to approve the second reading to revise policy GCCAA, sick leave.
We have a recommendation from committee. No second is required. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, 7-0.
Also on recommendation of the committee, I move to approve the second reading to revise policy GBCB, electronic timekeeping.
We have a recommendation from committee. No second is required. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, 7-0.
Also on recommendation of the committee, I move to approve the out-of-state travel as presented.
We have a recommendation from committee. No second is required. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor, please respond by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, 7-0.
Also on recommendation of the committee, I move to approve the request to raise the minimum purchase on a P card from $500 to $2,500 with the approval of the Chief Financial Officer and the Superintendent.
We have a recommendation from committee. No second is required. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, 7-0.
Also on recommendation of the committee, I move to approve the change order and payment to HG Rentals in the amount of $16,439.91 over the original contract price for the services completed during the construction of Bowings Corner Elementary.
We have a recommendation from committee. No second is required. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, 7-0.
Also on the recommendation of the committee, I move to approve the award of RFP 550-19-20 for musical instruments and supplies as follows. Line items 1, 4, 7, 8, 12, 23, 29, 34, and 38 to Music and Arts. Line item 3 to Ronald Sachs Violins. Line items 5, 10, 11, 19, 28, 21, 25, 30, 38, 35, and 39 to Pecknell Music Company, Inc. Line items 6, 7, 8, 9, 13, 20, 24, 26, 27, 31, 33, and 36 to Universal Melanie Services, LLC. Line items 2, 9, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 22, 28, and 37 to Washington Music Sales Center, Inc.
We have a recommendation from committee. No second is required. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, 7-0.
Madam Chairwoman, that concludes my report.
Next is the Committee on Next is the Committee on Facilities and Capital Planning. Chair Mac McQuillan.
Madam Chairwoman, the Committee on Facilities and Capital Planning met on September 10th, 2019. On recommendation of the committee, I move to approve the procurement model for additions as presented.
We have a recommendation from committee. No second is required. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, 7-0.
Also, on recommendation of the committee, I move to authorize the superintendent to enter into a memorandum of understanding regarding the donation of the district building located at 102 Gull Edge Street, Moncks Corner, South Carolina, to Berkeley County government in exchange for in-kind services in an amount to be negotiated by the superintendent.
We have a recommendation from committee. No second is required. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, 7-0.
Madam Chairwoman, that concludes my report.
We'll now move on to Agenda Item 9, Superintendent's Report. We'll start with 9A.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and board members and members of the audience. I'm going to yield most of my time to SEC. I've got just two quick announcements. Last evening, we opened our third Heritage Trust Federal Credit Union at Phillips Simmons High School. It was a good event. Thanks to Vice Chair Mac McQuillan for coming and supporting that. And Heritage Trust Federal speaks very highly. They have 5 branches in high schools. 3 of them are in Berkeley County. So we certainly appreciate that. This morning, our students, once again, a panel of 7 students, 7 seniors, and 6 seniors and 1 recent graduate. We watched as a group, the principals did, Most Likely to Succeed, the hour and 36-minute documentary, followed by a panel. Students, as usual, did a wonderful job, and some emerging themes are certainly common themes are starting to emerge from these discussions, so we're happy about that. And finally, Teacher Forum, Amanda Cooper, thank you for being here. And also we have Megan Lewis of Berkeley Intermediate School. Megan, thank you for being here tonight. Thank you so much. And at this time, I'd like to introduce Ricky Lopes and Hank Hurd from School Efficiency Consultants to deliver a report on a review they've done of our finance department and operations. Gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent, and thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. We appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening. I actually think this is the third time that we've had a representative. I think Ricky's done 2 other presentations for you in the past, and we're just very happy to continue our work. Before I start, as Dr. Ingram alluded to the fact of us continuing to work with you, is to thank him and Ashley and Tammy Ware also for working with us. Your entire administrative team has been a pleasure to work with. I just want to kind of rewind to start with and tell you a little bit about the background of School Efficiency Consultants. We are a unique firm. Our partners are all CPAs, but we consider ourselves to be lifetime educators because we spent our entire career in education, both at the local level and state level. We've been involved with a lot of school districts in 5 different states. Our name, School Efficiency Consultants, basically was derived back in 2010 when we formed our business, and we didn't really know exactly, how much work we would have. And we have since worked in over 90 school districts in 5 states. You see those primarily in the Southeast. In fact, we were at a business conference recently in Virginia, and we basically had a dinner with the School Boards Association, some of the members in Virginia, and they were talking about they wanted us to come up to work with several districts they had that had some financial issues and resource issues, resource management. And quite frankly, we were able to tell them that we would like to be able to do that at some point in the future, but we don't have a lot of capacity beyond working with the districts we have now. We're presently working in 22 school districts. Obviously, Berkeley County Schools is very high on our list of districts we're working with, and we have enjoyed working with your team here to try to better your resource management. We have a lot of consultants in the curriculum area. We study exceptional children's programs, AG, many different areas and so forth. We have human resource consultants that we bring in from time to time. The best thing about working with the resource side, if you work with the HR and finance staff, if they're working good together, that solves a lot of issues because, close to 85-90% of your budget is involved in someone's salary. We actually have saved millions of dollars in the districts we've worked in, documented savings, and it's always a pleasure to work with a team like you have here in Berkeley County Schools because we're so well accepted. Some of the different things that we've done, we've actually been working here in your school district since 2017, recommending human resource efficiencies that I discussed. We've actually had our insurance and risk management consultant, Ron Allen, who was president of the Southeastern School K-12 Risk Management Association. He's been in and worked with your team, and that is an area where school districts can actually implement a lot of efficiencies and save money. We've also worked with your team on the software conversion process. We basically came in after the decision obviously had been made to make the software conversion, but what we did was we interceded in with your vendor, Tyler, that you're working with, and we believe we've got it on a much better keel than it was earlier in trying to get back on schedule and so forth. Strengthening internal controls is a huge part of what we've been working on also. Obviously, internal controls have to be in place for a sound business system to take place. Studying the finance department, organizational structure. Ricky's going to talk to you in just a second about some of the specific recommendations we have. And then I'm going to follow up, tell you a little bit about the transportation study that our consultant, Scott Denton, and some of his recommendations.
Good evening. Thank you for having us again. And I want to follow up with our most recent engagement as far as our finance department review. But before I do that, I do want to commend the finance department. They've already made some changes that significant changes within the department. They're to be commended for that. But I just want you to know that it is a slow process for a couple of reasons. One, obviously, the issues that happened a couple of years ago. There was a lot of time spent on trying to retrieve information and try to work through some of those issues. And also, anytime you go through a software conversion, it doesn't matter who you use, you're going to have issues. In hindsight, it probably would have been better to delay the conversion because of the other issues that had happened, but that decision had already been made before the conversion took place. So there's a couple reasons why things maybe aren't moving as fast as you would like or the others would like, but there is progress being made in the finance department, good progress. I just thought you might need to know that. This most recent engagement, we actually interviewed several folks here within the district, and the first two, obviously, are the first two issues there, the finance department staff members. That's to find out exactly what their job duties are, and you can't just look at job descriptions, because the job description we find doesn't necessarily tie into what they're actually doing. So we like to talk to each of the members of the finance department to look at actual jobs versus what the written document says, and also titles are not always accurate. When you look at certain words on a job title, you assume that certain functions are being performed. That's not necessarily the case. So we talk to every person within the finance department, but the major interviews are really with the end users. The finance department, as well as any other department in the central office, is a service function. We all are there to provide service to the schools. Without the schools, without the kids, there isn't a school system. And so we want to find out, is that end user getting the service that they expect from the finance department? So we talked to principals, certain administrators within the central office, and also certain bookkeepers to find out what services they were getting, if they thought there any improvements could be made. Here are some of our recommendations, and you have a document that has a lot more detail than what I'm going to talk about tonight. For sake of time, I'm going to give you a brief overview, and of course we're available for questions at any time that you may have them. But one of the things that we recommend is actually assign a budget manager. There's a person with a title of budget manager, but they actually do not perform the functions of a full-time budget manager. And you'll see in another recommendation in just a minute that this budget manager would be responsible for all funds, not just the general fund or the capital projects, but all funds within the school district. And I'll go in more detail once again in just a minute. Establish a manager of student activity accounting. This position would only work with student activity accounting, and within that job description, we would recommend the daycare funds and possibly even fixed assets. Right now, that position has several other duties, but we would establish this have this position as a manager of student activity accounting. The next one would be a new position called a compliance specialist. This person would actually work with the schools directly, but they would be doing, for lack of a better term, audits of the schools to make sure they're performing their duties through a compliance checklist. And of course, that hasn't been put together yet, but there would be a checklist of things that are expected from the schools. This person would go out to the schools every year and perform an audit for those schools and have a recommendation or results of that audit that would go back to the administrators as well as the principal of the school. But that compliance specialist would be a very important position to make sure that the procedures and policies are being followed. Train new bookkeepers and principals. Right now, there are some bookkeeper meetings. As a matter of fact, we went to one last week, the annual bookkeeper meeting, but we didn't see a process in place where new principals and bookkeepers are being trained when they start. And so what we like to see is when a new bookkeeper or principal is named, that they go through for principals only maybe a half a day, a few hours to come meet with the finance department staff. Then the new bookkeepers working obviously with the finance department in more details for the day-to-day duties. We also think that we need to secure additional software training. At the time that the software was purchased, there was some training that was done months before the actual implementation took place. Well, what happens is you don't know what to ask because you don't know enough about the software. You're just watching somebody, go through the processes and procedures, and you're nodding your head or whatever. But then when it's actually time to implement it, then you say, "Oh, I wonder how you do X, Y, and Z." Well, that follow-up to how to do X, Y, and Z needs to be done. Okay, because now folks know what kind of questions to ask because they're actually using the software. So we think additional software training would be beneficial, not only to the finance department staff, but to the ones that are using it out at the schools. Process recommendations. This is a big one. Right now, a budget is approved only for the general fund and the capital projects. What we would recommend is that there be an annual budget document prepared by the budget manager that would cover all funds.
This past year, we actually did we did everything this past count. That's changed, hasn't? Because we
Yes.
looked at federal money. I don't know how long we've been going through the review, but those two bullets have already happened because we approved federal monies for this year, capital monies, and our general fund. So we should have approved, and also what was going to be spent out of 8%. So I think we did have an approved budget for every funding source.
Yeah, that's correct, Madam Chairperson. We were, some of these recommendations are things that we've been working with over the last 2 years to get to this point, so we wanted you to see what used to be, I guess, versus to where we wanted, but you're exactly correct. Some of these have already been.
We haven't done everything, but that I'm like, oh, check that one off. We've
Yes,
done that.
Check that one off. And also, one thing we are working on, I'll just go a little bit more detail for a second, on that budget document. With a budget manager, what you're looking at is a budget document that's not just numbers, but also a narrative that would have goals and objectives for each of the departments, or whatever term you want to use for the different sections within the district, so that you can see that the dollars are being spent for what the board would want to see them spent on, so that you can see where the money is going, and the public can see where the money is going. And so we know there's still some work that needs to be done to get to that final step, but the big step was actually bringing all the funds to the board for approval, and once, like you mentioned, that part's already been done. The third one, update the school activity fund procedures manual. That was actually one of the things that we were hoping to have done already, but with the software change, there was a different process or different module for school activity funds. Well, we've since gone back to change even that, and so until there's actually a platform in place as to how to handle the school activity funds, we won't be able to do a manual, but the manual is what the compliance specialist would use to make sure that the schools are complying with the procedures and policies that are in that particular manual. And so that's something that will be done in the future.
How would you see a compliance specialist different than an internal auditor? Because we have the internal auditor position. How would this compliance specialist be the same or different than that function?
Almost the same kind of function, but limited. The compliance specialist would just be working with school activity funds. The internal auditor is responsible for functions within the whole district outside of just even the school activity fund. They may be looking, I'll just use an example, they could be looking at transportation issues or maintenance issues or HR, whatever the superintendent or board directs the internal auditor to look at, whereas the compliance specialist would be limited specifically to the bookkeeping activity within the school activity fund. So similar responsibilities, but the compliance specialist would not necessarily have to be a degreed person. It could be one of your better bookkeepers that is the compliance specialist that's able to go out and work with their peers, so to speak, but they would obviously be at a little bit of an elevated position being called the compliance specialist.
Okay.
Another thing that we would recommend is a financial report card, and what this does is it causes accountability among the bookkeepers at the school. There'd be a checklist of X number of items of things that are supposed to be done on a monthly basis. That report card would be done monthly and would be sent out. So you'd be able to see that Ricky Lopes, yes, completed the checklist. Hank Curd, no, did not get payroll in on a timely basis, or whatever. It shows accountability as to who's getting the job done and who's not. Sometimes in the finance department, they can't get bills paid in time, payroll done on time, if they're not getting the information on a timely basis from the people that are supposed to be sending it to them. So there would be a monthly finance report card on our recommendations. A big change that would be different here, allows schools to maintain their financial books. There's a lot of time lag between schools having transactions and approvals and getting things back on a timely basis. So you have a heavy reliance on P cards. What we're recommending is that the schools actually have their own individual checking account just for their school activity funds, not budgeted funds. And that would allow them the ability to do things on a timely basis without having to go through, of course, you still have procedures and policies in place, and that's where the compliance specialist comes in, but you wouldn't necessarily have all the P card transactions. And you'll see some more on P cards in just a second. But we're used to seeing individual checking accounts set up on a school-by-school basis. Really, actually 2 accounts, but the one we're recommending is for the school activity account. The next one, all the contracts right now, our understanding is all contracts for approval are coming through the procurement office. And what's happening is the vendors send in their contracts and then it's reviewed for approval. What we're recommending is that there be a standard contract for the most basic of contracts, obviously not the real detailed 100-page contracts, but a lot of your contracts can be done on on a template or a format, we're recommending that the district develop that contract, and the vendor has to approve your contract. And as opposed to, if there's 100 different vendors, that's 100 different contracts. If 70 of them can be done by a standard contract, you're saving time of reviewing 70 more contracts. And so that's the process we're used to seeing, and it wouldn't take a lot of time to develop that particular contract. It doesn't need to be real wordy. It's just a basic contract that a lot of the smaller vendors or smaller dollar amounts can be approved through that contract. One of the things that we learned from talking to folks is that the estimates for our capital projects a lot of times are less than what the actual cost end up being. And so we're looking at improving the planning for capital projects. And I know you've already done some things since then to take care of that issue, but that is one of the things that came to our attention while we talked with the folks in the finance area. Any other questions before I go on to the next slide? Okay. This is the P cards again. We've seen a lot more P cards here than what we're used to seeing in school districts. That's not a negative. That's not a positive or a negative. It's just there's a lot of P card usage. Well, with that, you have to make sure that there's accountability. And so we, in our more detailed recommendations, we recommend that there be some board policies or procedures as to repercussions if P cards are not used, properly, so that folks will know that it's supposed to just be used for school activity. The board is to be commended. You approved it the second reading tonight. Last time we were here, you were getting ready to discuss it for your first read, but that's why it's on here. You're to be commended for raising that limit from 500 to 2,500. I think without fail, every person that we talked to said that was holding things up. And so by increasing that limit from 500 to 2,500, you have a lot of happy people out at the schools, I know, and also within the finance department by increasing that limit to 2,500. Once again, there's more things inside the report. We just thought we would hit the major ones as far as this presentation was concerned. Are there any questions or concerns before we continue? Okay.
One or two quick comments. One, Rick, you mentioned earlier about the school activity accounts. When we work with school districts across the Southeast, one of the areas of huge concern from an internal control standpoint is what takes place in individual schools, even though the amount of money, the fundraisers, activity fees, the money that's collected is much less than at a central office level. From a control standpoint, a lot of the individual schools are at areas that need tightening down because, there's a lot of cash. Obviously, when you have cash in the individual schools for fundraisers and those type things, trying to design processes to get that in a bank as soon as possible and then control the fundraisers when they begin and when they end and making sure that fundraisers are worth the time at an individual school. A lot of times new principals come in and they start evaluating the fundraising activities and the other type things that go on with the funds that are collected and so forth, trying to make sure those funds are maintained properly. The other thing, quick comment, Ricky mentioned earlier about the budget director position. We've seen when we look at districts that are high functioning as far as the finance functions are concerned and HR in dealing with program directors, whether it's transportation, maintenance on the operational side, child nutrition, but flipping over on the instructional side, working with principals to manage their funds properly, to get them spent early in the year. When you look at the exceptional children director and all the other integral parts, as Ricky said, when you look at developing having a budget director to work with those positions to make sure that resources are translated into classroom settings at a proper time, during the year. Transportation was another major business system. Scott Denton is our consultant. He's worked with Dr. Ingram and obviously your new transportation director to try to implement some changes and so forth. One of the things that we did in one of our earlier studies, we always love to talk with principals when we do our 360 gathering of data. And we knew early on when Dr. Ingram said it was an area that he had received a lot of concern from principals, buses being late and other aspects of the program, we started looking under the hood, almost literally, about how do we increase the efficiency in the transportation area. So we started doing some mentoring services and so forth, looked at assisting with the start of school activities that we've done this year. Bus stop evaluation forms and processes were put together that Scott had from best practices from many, many school districts. He put in an accident investigation process, bus conduct form and guidelines for that, bus driver new hire checklist, also working with developing some written guides to work with your principals and other professional staff, assistant principals that are dealing with issues associated with student transportation. Again, transportation is a huge expense. It's one that is necessary for any instruction to take place. Students have to be transported, as everybody in this room knows, safely to and from school. Reduce and eliminate bus driver shortages. That was an area that was huge in looking at trying to develop some strategies, to make sure that you have bus driver positions filled. Improve on-time arrival. Quite frankly, when we talked with some of your principals, they was very much concerned about buses in prior school years being routinely late and the discipline associated with having students, weather issues, standing around, as buses were delayed. So again, we wanted to try to look at operational efficiencies, also reduce reliance on school bus staff, central staff, actually driving the buses. And I will say this, almost all the districts we work with, there's a severe shortage of bus drivers all across the country. When you look at the amount of responsibility for the pay and so forth that's associated with driving a bus, it's just a hard area to fill. And as the economy has improved too, a lot of the drivers that have CDL license are recruited into private industry. And the packages that we had in the old days for bus drivers are not up to date as far as recruitment and retention of those staff. However, I think with some of the changes that Dr. Ingram and the staff is putting in place should eliminate a lot of those problems going forward and so forth. But again, this is a snapshot. There's a detailed report outlining some of the more intricate details as far as what our recommendations are. As consultants, we do two things. We make observations and recommendations. And so we like to see that there's active participation. We're very collaborative with the staff and so forth. So that pretty much concludes, I think, our presentation this evening. We'll be glad to try to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much for the time and the effort. We've had lots of people working since 2017 to get us headed in the right direction. You both have been integral in our recovery and moving forward, so we appreciate the time you've spent in Berkeley County and the recommendations. And we can see some things that we've already done from the work because it has been ongoing and more things to work on. So we appreciate you coming and spending some time with us and some time for us to go through the written report. Thank you.
Thank you for having us. We appreciate it.
You done? All right. We'll move on to agenda item 10A, Board Chair Report, upcoming dates and events. The school board annual meeting will be held on Saturday, December 7th, 2019 at 2 p.m. at the Charleston Marriott. We have 11 votes. So at the next meeting, we'll decide how you want to give the votes. Normally, we select a delegate and an alternate. I would expect that Mr. Ramsey would be our delegate because he is on the board of the School Board Association.
Yes, ma'am.
But if anyone else is attending and would like to be the alternate, also if you're planning to attend, you need to get in touch so that we can get registered. So please call Lacey and let her know if you're planning to attend this meeting on Saturday, December 7th. I think we have until November to get things done. So I don't think we have anything else. I think Mr. McQuillan is going to make the last motion.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
There's a motion by Mr. McClellan, a second by Mr. Ramsey to adjourn. Is there any additional discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor, please respond by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, 7-0. We are adjourned.
You can be our